Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's Tool Talk featuring Nuclei from Project Discovery. I'm Joe Seckman, AVP of R&D at Bishop Fox, and your host for today. Before we get started, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping items. To submit questions, use the Q&A tool on the left of your dashboard. We will try to answer throughout the webcast, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. If you experience any problems during the webcast, please let us know by using the questions module or the help tool. A recorded version of the webcast will be made available promptly when we conclude. Let's meet today's speakers. We have a very special guest joining us for this edition of Tool Talk, Mr. Sandeep Singh, the co-founder and CTO of Project Discovery. Sandeep, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, this is Sandeep, and first of all, thank you for having me on this for the webcast. Really excited to discuss Nuclei with you all. About myself, I've been in InfoSec for 10 years now. Love security, automation, gaming. And yeah, before Project Discovery, I worked as a security analyst on HackerOne bug bounty platform for 3 years. And before that, I did bug bounty for full time for 5 years and managed to get myself into top 3 hackers list on the HackerOne platform.
Awesome. Now let's introduce our Foxes that are here with us today. Matt, David, Zach, please take a moment to introduce yourself.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Thorson. I'm a senior consultant here at Bishop Fox. I've been here for about 2.5 years, and I'm a member of the network security group, so I specialize in external and internal pen tests. I've been pen testing for about 7 years, and prior to that, I was more on the blue team side and strong background in networking. So, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. David?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is David Bravo, and I'm a security consultant at Bishop Fox. I've been working here for a little over a year. I mostly specialize in web apps and cloud environments. So usually spend my days going hacking at web apps and reading source code. Once in a while, digging into cloud environments.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Zach.
Hey, everybody. I am Zachary Zeitlin. I am a God-fearing husband and father of 2, and I like to take things apart and put them back together again, hopefully still functioning. I've been with Bishop Fox for almost 2 years, and I'm a senior operator working under the Cosmos team, where our analysts, operators, and developers work together to identify vulnerabilities and offer remediation solutions for our customers. And I just love all things about computers, and the specialization is just computers in general. There's no real specialized there. So I love learning, and I just try to do that every single day. My specific role is the team lead, where we help orchestrate the engagement of our super smart members as they monitor and investigate our customers' attack surface. And that's all I've got.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach, and thanks, everyone, for joining us here today. Look into kind of where we're going to go today on this Tool Talk. We're going to start off kicking it over to Sandeep to give us a little bit of history of Project Discovery and Nuclei, cover a little bit about what it is, how it works. Then we're going to have kind of a roundtable style discussion where some folks and Foxes from Bishop Fox are going to talk about their favorite aspects of Nuclei and share some stories and some practical aspects of using the tool. We're going to conclude with a dedicated time for some live Q&A and then follow up with a wrap-up. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Sandeep for a history of Project Discovery and Nuclei.
Thank you. So yeah, basically it's been 3 years since we started to working on Project Discovery on all the projects we have. And since, let's say, sorry, I was for the first time, but yeah, I and my other co-founders who actually decided to work on the Project Discovery, we actually met on the GitHub through open source project. I'm sure some of us heard about the Subfinder. It's a passive subdomain integration tool. So Iceman and Marco happen to be an author of that project. That's how we got to know each other. And we decided, let's say we shared the ideas and the things we have at that time. Since security and automation was a common interest for all of us, we decided to work on all the ideas we had that time, and that's how everything got started. And Nuclei was also one of those ideas as well. And yeah, since then we started working on all the projects we have published in during last 3 years with the basic idea to ease the automation process of the security. And yeah, that's it. We are here now. Last year, we actually decided to switch full time on project discovery. And yeah, since then, we are working on it.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you very much. I know Bug Bounty, and it's a large community, but also a small community. It's very interconnected, and a lot of folks know each other. So yeah, definitely awesome that you all could collaborate and come together with such an awesome tool. Okay, first, before we get to the roundtable, I wanted to start off with just a simple question to the audience, mainly around experience with vulnerability scanners and how they gauge and what's important. The question is, if you could maximize a single quality of a vulnerability scanner, what would that quality be? Speed and efficiency, accuracy, ease of use, or extensibility? Now, this poll really materialized in reviewing kind of the genesis of Nuclei and seeing what were some of the pain points and the ideas, and the community to come together to handle and address a lot of these issues. So I really think that this is just one of those important yet difficult aspects, because all of these are really important. So Sandeep, one question I had for you while we wait for some results to be tabulated here and come in is kind of where was the turning point? You mentioned like-minded folks coming together. Was there a specific issue or pain point that you were like, there has to be a better way, and this is what we're going to do?
Yeah, definitely. Like if we see the challenges we had before the Nuclei, there are so many things, including the automation, the customization, the collaboration part. So for example, actually just prepared a nice a little diagram which basically just explain through it. So if it's fine, I can quickly share my screen. Yeah, just give me a moment. So yeah, this was the idea basically in the start when we are working on the Nuclei project. So we had that problem where we are working on some automation, but we have to repeat so many stuff again and again. And for example, if you're doing bug bounties or where the time is critical for you, you wanted to automate all the process that you can just repeat and don't redo all the stuff. And the customization was really played important part of it. For example, how simple it is to edit or update your templates, or for that matter, how simple it is to create new templates. So the customization was important part which was missing before. Before we built the Nuclei. I'm not saying like it was missing, but yeah, that was something we noticed. And apart from that, there is an automation collaboration part which can helps actually to, let's say, work together from community point of view. So basically these are the few pain points that we identified that point, and we thought we will work on a project which will simplify all the stuff, and yeah, that's how we started with the Nuclei in the start.
Excellent. So it looks like we've got some results coming in here. We've got some two clear leaders, accuracy and extensibility. I think, speaking from experience in my own world, accuracy is important based off of spending most of your time filtering out false positives. Nobody likes to do that. I think extensibility is awesome as well, because there's only so much a vendor can actually prognosticate and anticipate. Where the real world comes to play, you really need to be able to rapidly inject some of that intelligence into the scanner to see on a larger scale. And I think some of the panel discussion may go down that path, but we'll go there. So nice little segue into our roundtable. So now that we've talked a little bit about the history of project discovery and Nuclei, I wanted to kind of move the chat to how we use this tool at Bishop Fox and how we solve some of these problems. And I think whether you're talking about crowdsourced offerings like bug bounty or pen testing as a service, or even broader solutions like attack surface management or traditional security consulting services, what's clear today is that we need to operate with a renewed sense of urgency, since we're covering an ever expanding attack surface. So with that in mind, one of the questions I'd like to pose to the panel, and we'll start with Matt and move on to David and Zach, and then finish up with Sandeep, is how has Nuclei helped you navigate these challenges in finding and confirming vulnerabilities in large attack surfaces?
Okay, well, thank you for the question. I'll go first. So I specialize in external tests, and I like to have a lot of tools in my toolbox. So I'll utilize anything from like traditional port scanners to proprietary tools to scripts, lots of different tools, and then I'll kind of jump into manual investigation. So I first started, I heard about Nuclei. I was talking to our Cosmos team, and they were telling me about their these analyzers that they had developed. So they had created, I think, I believe it's thousands at this point, but they've sort of created a bunch, thousands of these analyzers, and they backported them to Nuclei. So I started testing them in an external test, and I realized that it's come to fill a really critical gap for me. So like a characteristic of an external pen test is that the majority of the attack surface is web-based for the most part. But an external test is not really a web application test. It's more what I like to call kind of a light application test. So with external testing being kind of time boxed, usually from a few days to maybe a week, what I found is Nuclei is a tool that I'll use on the first day to, and I use it to quickly fingerprint the underlying technology. I'll look for suspicious indicators, and try to, identify vulnerabilities, so I can really spend the rest of the time kind of deep diving into a full-blown penetration test. So that's so for me, it's really speed and efficiency are really kind of a big one for me among that polling question, but accuracy is definitely more so. But for me, it's really that ability to hit all my targets that first day with Nuclei really fast, and then kind of go through and look for false positives and things like that. So that's where I use Nuclei.
Excellent. David, how about you?
Yeah, so the context that I use it is different. I'll usually, the type of work I'll usually do is mostly focused on web apps, APIs, large source code repositories. So Nuclei kind of plays a role more, if anything, the templates play a strong role in my work than Nuclei itself. Because in addition to, there are some templates that I think are super useful, like that token spray one. I think we'll talk about a little bit later. And so sometimes I'll find a random token and I'm like, what is this? So that token spray template is a way for me to really quickly determine what it is. Is it active? Is it usable? And so it sort of does some more manual tasks that used to be manual in an automated way and much faster. And it feels a lot more reliable as well. And specifically talking about the templates is that I'll normally, maybe if I don't use a certain template, if I see that like there's a certain server that's using a particular technology, I'll actually go into the Nuclei templates, search for that technology, and see what kind of misconfigurations there are. If I can get a version number, look for known vulnerabilities. So it's kind of become, in addition to my additional research into reading write-ups or using some of my past exploits, going and leveraging the community's work in this sort of very standardized form that is the Nuclei template. So I really use those Nuclei templates a lot. Also, especially when I don't know too much about the technology. That's a great place for me to start looking into how can I exploit something that I don't know too much about, and where will it lead my research into going to get some more actionable and impactful findings for a particular client.
Excellent. Thanks, David. Zach.
That's a great point. I wanted to emphasize something that David mentioned, and he talked about standardizing the language of detection, or POC, using the templates. And the example I have is if I go to GitHub and I search for a proof of concept for CVE 12345, I'm going to get a Python script here, a Metasplit module in Ruby over there, or maybe even a GitHub gist laying out several different curl commands to run. And so with Nuclei, what I love about it is all of this is standardized with the YAML templates. And so now our team can respond to vulnerabilities by all speaking the same language, and not only speaking the same language with each other, but speaking language with the community at large. And so we just develop a template that can then apply to all of our customers' attack surface. And so with this now standardized language, Nuclei is able to crowdsource the proof of concepts for rapid testing and rapid employment. And so we can then build each other's understanding of vulnerabilities really quickly because we have the ability to communicate in the same language, as well as rapidly test that vulnerability. And so on my team, our clients are not just getting a snapshot, a point-in-time test, but they're getting a thorough integration into our platform to have a security improvement. And while they're integrated into our platform, they may undergo mergers and acquisitions or divestitures or other sorts of changes to their public footprint. And so the flexibility that we're afforded by Nuclei makes it really easy to reapply tests, those templates that we have, against newly identified endpoints. And it will follow the attack surface as it changes. And so as Matt mentioned, our clients have a huge attack surface. And so with Nuclei, we can reduce the noise down and focus on certain endpoints that we identify using those templates. So those are the ways that I love how Nuclei just augments our capability on the or within Bishop Fox.
Excellent. Now, Sandeep, I just wanted to see, from practically speaking, do you have any thoughts or anything that particularly resonates for you with some of the comments from the Foxes here?
Yeah, like that was really interesting to know about how it is actually getting utilized. Like for me, I have did bug bounty for some long time, so I know like how actually utilize Nuclei to help me, and the time factor is really played important role for me. Like Nuclei has been a time saver for me. Like there's time where we are dealing with so many exploits and so many new exploits getting published every day, and we are storing all those information somewhere on the Evernote or any platform where we just collect all the vulnerabilities details, so we can test it out later whenever we are testing some targets or any new bug bounty program getting up. And the thing I did, like I converted all my manual stuff, the manual testing in form of templates. So now I don't have to remember all those vulnerabilities again, like how to test it again, because once you converted that into format, you forget about it. So I always say Nuclei template, like you write it for once and use for always. So first I converted all my vulnerabilities, which I used to manually testing all the time. Now they all have the form of template, so I don't need to recall. And whenever I get new target to test, I just run through all of them. So that was the first, let's say, time saver for me. And second, the customization part, like how simple it is to just update if anything new information you get to know about that any specific vulnerability which you used to test. And Log4j was a great example for that. Like there always been new payloads coming, or let's say new headers, or from where you can inject new information. So it's so simple to just go back and edit that template file to include your new variations of attack. So the time saver and the customization part was something Nuclei templates and Nuclei really helped me a lot.
Excellent. Now, one of the things that I think with the roots and the genesis of Nuclei coming and sprouting out of the bug bounty world, and thinking about the attack surface here, there's a lot of characteristics that are there, but arguably one of the areas that does produce a lot, if not, I don't know if it's a majority, but a good amount of vulnerabilities is the application layer. But Nuclei supports multi-protocols, and I think that's an important aspect, and definitely something that is still relevant today. Even services that have been out for years and years are still vulnerable that aren't speaking HTTP. So One question I had for the panel, and Matt, I'll pitch this over to you from the network security practice side, is, what are some useful aspects of Nuclei and that, multi-protocol support comes in handy? And, just speaking in general of non-HTTP related vulnerabilities, why is that important?
Sure. Well, I would say the largest group of targets for me still is HTTP, but I've had a lot of success with, for instance, like SSH protocol, since it's a very commonly open external port. So just the other day, I found a version of an SSH version that was susceptible to a 2018 CVE that allowed enumeration of usernames. So what I typically do in an external test is most consultants will run Nmap. It's kind of a really core piece of our toolbox. So I'll run Nmap and I'll include the scripts on it. But in this particular case, I was looking at the script output and they did not find this one particular one, which I thought is pretty unusual for Nmap. So when I was going through my Nuclei scan phase, it identified the old CVE, and then I was able to go in and kind of test it extensively and sure enough, confirm that we had an actual finding there. So, it's not, I wouldn't say it's the most cutting edge finding by any means, but it's certainly, it's a very one of those kind of core findings that we need to let our customers know about. And, I wouldn't have found it if I didn't have this one particular template for SSH. So I use it for that. I'll use it for looking for, the other commons, FTPs, things like that. So it comes in handy quite a bit, I've found. But I still would say, the web-based stuff is the core of what I find. So
yeah, absolutely. David, how about you?
Yeah, so as someone who basically exclusively touches HTTP stuff, I was thinking about this question earlier when we were talking about it, and I think in my context, I don't have an experience of where I've actually used it. I have organically gone to the DNS templates for Nuclei, and I recently, about a couple months ago, had a project. I feel like everything is becoming a web app now, and everyone's trying to force everything into a web app. So it was a web app whose server talked to many, many different IoT devices. And some of those devices communicated in some odd protocols that I wasn't too familiar with. And so I can definitely see sort of like in the future, as more and more things are becoming a web app, as more and more things are being connected to a web app, especially in the IoT space, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And especially if the Nuclei engine can support it, I think the community will fill in all of those templates when they arrive, when it becomes really necessary. If there's a huge thing in some MQTT protocol, or if it's a huge thing in some, I don't know, Samsung super duper toaster, I definitely see a Nuclei template being created for that, and the availability of it in Nuclei currently sort of enables that possibility. So definitely think it's important. And I definitely think in the future there's going to be an interesting space for it too.
Absolutely. Zach, over to you.
Yeah, with multi-protocol support, I particularly love just the network requests and the flexibility that I get with Nuclei to be able to craft any raw data to a TCP endpoint and then parse the response. And so this has enabled our team to test for two things, a lot of things, but the two things that I want to bring up. One is the reuse of credentials. And so that can include both HTTP endpoints, as well as any other protocol that does some sort of network-based authentication. It could be mail-based, whether it's SMTP or Post Office Protocol or IMAP or FTP, SSH. All those different protocols can be tested. And on the Cosmos team, we have all of those endpoints mapped out. And so all we have to do then is supply a credential that we have found on their attack surface or through some investigation, and just send it to all of those endpoints that are already documented on their attack surface. And so it's a really cool way to test for credential reuse really quickly on their endpoints. I don't have to one-off go through it or craft some Bash script or Python script that's a one-time use, like it's already built in a template. And then the other thing that I like to test for is, that was mentioned previously, is validating any sort of exposed API token. So if I find on a discovery, let's say there's a GitHub exposure or sometimes directory listings that expose a GitHub configuration information and or at least an entire GitHub repository or a Git repository, in that exposure, I will find a token, but I don't know what it goes to because it's not an AWS token or something that's clearly spelled out in the token structure. And so with the token spray, I'm able to just apply all of the different previously defined YAML templates, and I can send that token and test, okay, what does this token possibly belong to? And then I can test really quick what API endpoint that token may belong to. And that's a really cool use that I like. That's sped up our way of testing exposed credentials or exposed tokens. And so I'm also a fan of the integration with the Interact server, which allows the out-of-band testing. And so this enables testing of our customers for Log4j. And with multiple protocol support, our Log4j payloads are not limited to HTTP. We set up our own instance of Interact, and we could easily test our customers for Log4j on any sort of protocol. I mean, I know it started initially with HTTP, and you see people start creating different headers with different payloads. I'm like, oh, let's go ahead and adapt our template to include those different headers. And then you saw obfuscation, like, oh, okay, well, let's go ahead and add some obfuscation to that as well. And then you started seeing people think, okay, let's skip HTTP and let's go to all these other protocols as well, and start throwing Log4j payloads there. And people were just going, people were spreading out the information really rapidly to the different avenues in which you can throw payloads at endpoints. And if there's some sort of log server behind the scenes that will intercept that and store it and then process it, well, that's a potential vulnerability of Log4j. And so it was really cool to see how fast we were able to apply updates as we discovered different avenues of attack. And that was all made possible by Nuclei's flexibility with templates.
Excellent. Now, Sandeep, from the bug bounty perspective, multi-protocol support, the ubiquity of HTTP, how has that really helped you in the genesis of, like, I guess from your observations from the bug bounty world, you must have a good bit of experience and examples on success stories there.
Yeah, like the HTTP being most common or usual is the reason, like, we can simply or easily test HTTP services as we are, let's say, dealing with them all the time. And the reason the support we have for the multi protocols, or let's say where we can interact with the different kind of non-HTTP services or protocols, including DNS, file, and TCP, and SSL protocols. The thing, once we have the template thing, let's say common in use, which is, let's say, actually matters. Once we support all the protocols, then we can, let's say, simply templatize all the different protocols as well. Like before this, like, we have the separate tool or dedicated tool for testing different vulnerability in different protocols. For example, DNS, if I'm testing for the DNS-based takeovers, then I have to use a separate or dedicated tool which is specifically written for that. And same goes for the secret scanning as well. If I wanted to scan for some secrets on the source code or GitHub project, as Jack mentioned, then I also have a different tool for that. So just to, let's say, eliminate all those multiple things, handling on the multiple, let's say, with help of multiple tools, having support of multiple protocol, let's say, just standardize all the stuff. And so as a user, I only had to worry about how I can configure those vulnerabilities in templates, and I don't need to think about if those those different protocols types, like, and that's what let's say we are trying to go with in form of with the Nuclei to support more protocols, so it becomes a common platform to test for various kind of vulnerabilities without switching between multiple tools.
Yeah, I was going to say, just look at the poll results earlier with extensibility being there. I mean, you not only have extensibility of HTTP-related vulnerabilities you can find, but other protocols that are supported using the same tool all in one. I think that really ultimately just signifies extensibility right there. One interesting question that I had, it was really just a side discussion that we had prior to joining this tool talk, was about support for credential spraying and some templates that were created there. And I think it was Zach, you and Sandeep had an interesting discussion. I'm wondering if you'd like to share kind of that story with our audience today.
So definitely, so this was something, this was something I was discussing before with the Jack. So before we had those token spray templates, we actually didn't realize or had idea we can also make use of Nuclei templates to automate token spray testing as well. So it's kind of supported indirectly, but as we didn't know about the potential. But one day, Jack actually created a PR including 67 templates for different kind of services and utilizing Nuclei to spray against those endpoints. And when we actually saw that PR, we realized how useful it can be. So we actually went ahead and added a feature which makes it more, let's say, directly usable. So you don't have to do additional stuff. For example, providing the token with the CLI command. So it was something really interesting when we saw actually that PR, and that's why I always say, like, when we go open with the tools or projects and ideas in public, we get to know more about how others are approaching that problem, and that's actually helps if we get all the input in place. And thanks to Jack who came up with those PRs, and yeah, that was really interesting.
Zach, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I would just like to say that how quickly adopted the PR was. I submitted it, and then like within less than a day, I'm getting comments on how to improve it and coding best practices, and it was really great to be a part of that. That's the real power of the open source project, and the fact that the community can come in and collaborate to improve Coolidge. And so another thing that's really great to see is that it started off with, I think, what you said, 67 templates initially that just were given, and then very quickly that number grew. I don't know what the number is currently, but the number of templates that were provided by the community, when the community realizes, oh, that's a great way to utilize this tool, let me go ahead and add all the other API endpoints that I commonly hit. And so you got, like, I have my use case for it, but that's like a small 1% of what, everyone else would also use it. And so they can contribute their 1%, and eventually start building up an entire folder inside the repository of a bunch of templates that can test so many APIs. And I know there's a ton of APIs out there that are undocumented as well. So as reverse engineers start going after API endpoints too, we could say, oh, well, there's another way to test a credential against an API endpoint and see if it's valid. And it's not documented, but Nuclei has documentation on it. So it's really cool to see the community come together and solve the problem of how to test tokens against undocumented API endpoints.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and not just that. Yeah, just to continue on that, what Jack was saying, like, not just that feature, there are so many features or things we have added that we initially did not thought about it, but because once we got public with the Nuclei engine, those features requests coming from the community, and we realized how if we did not have that information, or let's say the engine public, we never knew about those features or things which we can now do. So really happy to see how community, let's say, engaging through the projects, and really love to work with everyone who is collaborating with the project. So yeah.
That's awesome. Crowdsourcing at its finest. At this time, I'd like to take one moment to remind the audience that we've got a dedicated time for Q&A. So please, if you have any questions for Sandeep or the panel, by all means, submit them right now. At this moment, I'd also like to give the floor to Sandeep to see if he's got, any exciting future developments from Project Discovery or specifically with Nuclei that he'd like to share with the audience.
There are a couple of things which we are currently working. around nuclei, which will, let's say, release in upcoming times. But yeah, just to give you idea and everyone, we are working on the MVP of the Nuclei cloud. So currently we can run Nuclei on on same machine. But with the cloud, we don't have to worry about the scaling or like how many times we have to take to complete the scan. So that is something will be really powerful once it will be out. And we are also working on the Nuclei template database. It's a nice web UI, just let you easily go through all the templates we have and filter around it, or let's say edit or create new template through the web UI. And yeah, there are a couple more things which let's say I cannot mention, but those are coming in few months or weeks, I would say. So yeah, excited to see when they are going out.
So excellent. So we'll stay tuned. Okay, well, Sandeep, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and thank you to our panelists from Bishop Fox for this great discussion about nuclei. And as always, thank you all in the audience for attending this talk. We'd love your feedback, so please remember to fill out the survey and to register for episode 4 of our Tool Talk series, which will be held on April 13th, where Dan Petro will once again be joining me to discuss his latest research, Unredactor. You can find the registration link in the related content section of the presentation console to save your spot to our next Tool Talk episode. Thank you once again, and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.